Good evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. Now, this isn't a traditional edition of the Ministry of Horror. We've kind of already got a main segment. We have a featured presentation, and it's quite a big bit of a featured presentation. It's been pre-recorded, so I'm going to keep our little preamble lean, mean, not go too over the top. We don't have too much to catch up on, and we don't have that much news to go, but we do have a couple of reviews. So, I don't know if I mentioned I'm your host, Tezz. The reviews, we've got an exclusive look at a film called Children of the Pine. Let me just check the title on that. Children of the Pines. And also the new Salem's Lot. So I'm going to have reviews of those coming up pretty shortly, because as I say, not a huge amount of news. And in terms of just general kind of admin and stuff, I've mainly been doing the 31 Days of Horror Challenge. 31 Days of Halloween Horror Challenge. So I'm getting through this kind of speedy, because our featured presentation, which we'll cut to after the reviews, we've got the Gruff back, and myself and the Gruff have revisited the David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy of sequels. With the purpose being, have our opinions changed? Watching these films together, maybe not directly one after the other, but in a short space of time, have our opinions changed? Do we like them more than the first time? Do we like them less than the first time? I had a great chat with the Gruff. We'll be coming up to that a bit later on. So in terms of the 31 Days of Halloween Horror Challenge, I can't remember where I'd got up to last week, but the Ghost Story, I watched the original BBC, I think it's BBC, adaptation of The Woman in Black. It's very good. It's quite similar to the play. It's good adaptation for Ghost Story. For Samara Weaving, I watched The Babysitter on Netflix. For body horror, I watched The Stuff, which I didn't think was very good, I'm going to be honest. Blumhouse, I watched Viral. Silly Scares, I did start off watching this thing called WNUF Halloween Special that's on Shudder. I didn't really like it. I saw what it was kind of going for, but it was taking the joke almost too far to the point that it isn't actually funny. So that wasn't for me. So I ended up watching on Fran's recommendation, You Might Be the Killer. That was pretty good, actually. I think that needs a bit more recognition, that film. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Nicolas Cage. Watch Mandy. Mandy's incredible. Mandy's a firm favourite. Give it a second chance. Now, that did play into the main discussion, and that was Halloween Kills. We may have finally come to the end of talking about that film. So that may be the last mention prior to the featured presentation coming up a bit later on. And then Underrated Dracula. I watched Renfield, so another Nicolas Cage film, but I enjoy that. I do feel it should have done better at the box office. And then it came from Tubi. I watched Festival of the Living Dead. It's okay. It's very low budget. It's got the girl that was in Gotham as Catwoman in it. It's okay. Could have been much worse. But that's pretty much what I've been doing since then. No gaming. I do want to get Silent Hill 2. But if I'm getting it, I want to get the disc copy, and it seems as though that is a hot commodity because it's sold out everywhere. Originally, I just want the disc copy because it would be cheaper than the download. It's only like £5, isn't it? But trying to watch the pennies, and I probably shouldn't get it till payday anyway. But yeah, out of stock everywhere, so it's kind of saving me money. So that's no gaming. I mean, you could say, yes, didn't you buy the Silent Hill HD collection? Yeah, but it's the HD collection. It's tank controls. It's unplayable for me. So we haven't really done any horror gaming at all. But nevertheless, other than that, I did jump back into a game called Dark Pictures Anthology Little Hope, which is the one Dark Pictures game that I never finished because it's not that great. Jumped into it. Got to a moment where one of my characters was just about to either die or survive a quick-time event with a monster straight out of Hellraiser, and the controller died. Changed the batteries, didn't work. Tried every sort of combination of new batteries, didn't work. Like, it's just completely just dead. So I had to get a new controller. So the joys of expenses. Anyway, guys, without further ado, we're going to jump into the very minute bit of horror news. This is the news. Ho, 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 ho. So, with all horror news, this is from bloodydisgusting.com, right up from Bad Miska. I'm keeping this quite brief because I need to keep an ear out for the front door. It's a very, very, very busy day today. But I digress. Bloodydisgusting.com comes from Brad Miska. Pinch me. Terrifier 3 is the #1 film in the country, in the US. Talk about a perfect storm. I can't believe I'm sitting here writing an article about how a little slasher movie is the #1 film in the entire country. Yes, it's true. Terrifier 3 beat all the odds by defeating not only the criminally overpanned Joker Folie à Deux, but also the modern animated cinematic marvel, The Wild Robot. According to early estimates, Damien Leone's Terrifier 3 is estimated to have pulled in $18.2 million over the weekend, easily taking the top spot at this weekend's box office. There was an insane momentum shift where Joker took a critical and fan beating, resulting in a horrific opening and monumental drop-off. This was fueled by a loss of showings, many of which shifted over to Terrifier 3. I mean, Terrifier 3 has been getting all of the headlines recently. And I think this is great. I mean, we've talked to the hilt about Art and his adventures and how I really didn't dig the first film at all, and maybe I'll give that a rewatch at some point. But I really thought, okay, Art looks great. He's a interesting new horror villain, but as a film, it was gore for gore's sake. I didn't care about any of the characters. It did nothing for me. Terrifier 2, I did enjoy as much as it is really squirm-inducing. Terrifier 3, I'm hoping to watch this week. So later this week / next week, we should hopefully have a review. I want to see it in the cinema. But I mean, that is incredible. That's a real kind of grassroots movement. And you're now getting some people saying, oh, Art the Clown isn't an indie invention, he's an industry plant. It's like, no, like an industry plant would be, let's drop something now and we hope within the next 3 to 6 months it's a massive hit, and if not, we wash our hands of it. Art the Clown has been, around since the first short way back when. So, hats off to Damien Leone. It's a real achievement. Next, Samara Weaving and Radio Silence are officially back for Ready or Not 2. This one's from Megan Navarro. After months of speculation, it's official. Samara Weaving and Radio Silence will both be back for the anticipated sequel, Ready or Not 2, per deadline. The news was announced by Radio Silence at a Searchlight screening of their 2019 fan favourite film. Production and release info will be announced at a later date. Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette directed Ready or Not. In addition to Samara Weaving, the cast included Adam Brody, Mark O'Brien, Henry Sneerzy, and Andy McDowell. The first film introduced a mythology wherein the wealthy Lidomos family has made a deal with the devil, one that requires them to take part in bizarre and deadly wedding night traditions. There's much that can be done with the premise going forward, even if the first movie ended with Weaving's Grace massacring the family and burning down their estate. Yeah. We talked briefly about this when it was kind of rumoured. I have to admit that I enjoyed the original, for sure, but it did have a bit of a finite ending. So for there to be a follow-up, if there's an interesting story to go for it, then sure, I'm interested. But off the top of my head, I don't know what they would do to follow up the story. I mean, I suppose there could be an extended family. They could be part of this greater cult, maybe. Yeah, I like the Radio Silence directing team, and Samara Weaving's great, so going to be keeping an ear on the ground for any future news. Further Terrifier 3 news: Christian group protests Satanic Santa in front of Kansas City movie theatre. Brad Miska write-up. Damien Leone's Terrifier 3 is on its way to become the #1 film, well it is, in the country. Along the way, it has been the centre of several major stories, including being banned to minors in France, having 2 people pass out in Australia, and 1 person vomiting at the UK premiere. The real badge of honour is when religious groups find you to be such a threat that they take time out of their day to protest, and it hasn't taken them long to come after Terrifier 3. David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown in the Terrifier films, including an all-timer horror villain performance in Terrifier 3, shared on his Instagram the above photo on blowdisgusting.com, taken by his cousin outside of the B&B Theatre's Main Street KC at the Power and Light District in Kansas City, MO, that's Missouri, posted with a simple caption that says it all: "We're doing something right." Actor Devon Sawyer tweeted a similar sentiment in response to the post, writing, "A sure sign a movie is probably really good is if there's people protesting outside the theatre it's playing at." It's almost exactly 40 years ago that Silent Night, Deadly Night's killer Santa spawned similar protests, which at the time resulted in the 1984 classic being pulled from theatres. But have no fear, because Bloody Disgusting has zero plans on doing the same. It's a different time, we're a different company, and this unrated slasher shocker isn't going anywhere. I mean, that's pretty cool. The protest banner they've had said, "Keep Christ in Christmas. We protest the Satanic Santa Terrifier 3 movie showing here." And it does look like a couple of old people, a couple of elderly people. It doesn't look like it's a big protest, but nevertheless, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And finally, demo for Condemned-inspired Butcher's Creek is available now from Mike Wilson. Right on cue, developer David Szymanski has released the demo for his upcoming Condemned-inspired title, Butcher's Creek. The demo features the introduction and first level of the full game, giving players 30 minutes of content. According to Szymanski, the demo for Butcher's Creek will remain available and free for the foreseeable future. No word yet on the release date for the game, which is still scheduled to come out this year. In November of 1993, you are a troubled loner looking to get your fix for cinematic gore. You travel to an abandoned cabin near Butcher's Creek, Pennsylvania, based on the rumour of authentic snuff films. Unfortunately for you, that rumour is turned on its head, as you end up captured by a gang of sadistic killers. Now your only option is to fight your way out using whatever tools are available. Those tools echo what you found in Butcher's Creek's inspirations: hammers, wrenches, axes, pipes, 2x4s, box cutters, and more at your disposal to dish out some violence. And going one step further than the more brutal executions in Manhunt determining your score, you must photograph your deeds in Butcher's Creek in order to regain health. It's all set to a gritty shot-on-video look of found footage to complete the nastiness. And you won't be relegated to that abandoned cabin either. You'll be visiting farmhouses, factories, and even strip clubs in order to exact your revenge. While we'll probably never get a third entry in the Manhunt series, Butcher's Creek is definitely looking to fill that void. I really enjoyed the first Condemned game. I didn't really play much of the second game, where it really leaned into the full-on supernatural elements, and there was supernatural elements in the first game, but it had a more goopy sort of design in the second one, which didn't interest me as much as the gritty realism, for want of a better term, in the first game, especially the mannequins. They were creepy as hell. So this sounds pretty cool. I will have to have a look to see. I'm assuming this is on PC. Don't think it actually says where the demo is available. I mean, if it's available on consoles, then that would be great, but I'm going to just guess PC. But I like the look of that. Very cool. That's it for this pint-sized edition of the Horror News. This was the news. And you know I'm rushing to do the show when I haven't even set up my images for the review section. So normally, if you watch the video edition of the show, whenever I review a film, I have a bit of artwork on screen for the film in question, and because I have rushed, I haven't prepared that, so you're now seeing that appear on screen now. So Children of the Pine. So this came to my attention very recently, of a new film. This is it was a winner at Best Feature at the ICE Cinefest, Best Thriller at the Indo-French Film Festival, as well as an Audience Award at the Gasparilla International Film Festival. It's Children of the Pines is the directorial feature debut from director and screenwriter Joshua Morgan. The film also features a standout original score from Soon Rose Wagner, who also composed the score for the 2015 Oscar-nominated movie A War. I think the thing to kind of just be aware of with this is that The director wrote this when they were 17 years old and started directing it when they were 18. And when I'd heard this from the distributors, I was like, I mean, okay, you're gonna automatically assume that there's a certain ceiling on the quality for the film, for the production. You would not assume someone so young has directed this and written this film. It's actually quite mind blowing, the production quality that's in this. But as with all the reviews, we'll talk a little bit about the plot, talk about the things I like, things I didn't like. Then I'll give it a score out of 10. So, over her winter break, Riley, a college junior, is persuaded by her estranged parents, Kathy and John, to visit home to fix their fractured relationship. As Riley settles in, she discovers that her parents have developed an unsettling friendship with her high school ex, Gordon, and that mysterious children are now living in the house. A series of disturbing flashbacks reveal Kathy and John's time at an eerie, unconventional couples therapy retreat that promise to heal their problems through supernatural means. As the day progresses, Riley starts to uncover the dark and twisted truth of her parents' desperate attempts to mend the deep issues plaguing their family. Okay, so the pros in this film are there are some really beautiful shots in it, and the score is incredible. It's no surprise that the composer has done some great work based on just first time watching this film and hearing the score. It does sound beautiful. We've got some great exposition. There's some real great establishing shots. I think the difficulty is, whilst I do appreciate, the age of the filmmaker going into this, there's a real level of maturity there. And there's a particular kill later on that does look pretty good. But outside of that, it is an incredibly dialogue-heavy film. And I only sort of mention that because we have a number of long conversational scenes that do stretch out moments that I don't feel needed to be that long. We're not learning enough of interest in those moments. The acting is decent on the whole, but there is this weirdness to it which I think was intentional, but it does make some of the decisions and some of the lack of questioning until the 11th hour quite odd, such as Riley. You'd really think she'd have a bit more panic and hysteria when being confronted with what's going on. There's the initial kind of confusion of why there are random children living in my house that aren't my parents' kids. And I just feel that the confusion on her element when it comes to the relationship that her ex has with her parents, these random children who are all a bit bratty, that you would think this is kind of crazy a little bit more vocally and push that a bit more. So it is an odd film. The supernatural elements that are going on here, obviously I'm not going to go into spoilers. There's a little bit too much ambiguity as to like what the logical jump of this cult element in the flashbacks and then to where we are present and what's actually occurring just felt quite jarring. I mean, they're nice scenes, but in terms of how it progresses the story, yeah, I felt that it didn't really answer anything, but it didn't also ask that many more questions. It's an ambitious film. I like the approach of it, but I did feel it dragged in places, and some of the reactions of, I guess specifically Riley, because she's kind of she's almost the fish out of water here, because it seems like the whole town's kind of gone a bit cuckoo bananas. It's an odd one. It's decent. It's worth a watch, I would say. It's not a bad film, but I mean, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It was just a bit of an odd one, really. But kudos to Joshua Morgan on it. Fair play. I certainly couldn't have made something that mature at that age. We're going to move on now to my next review, which is of the latest adaptation. I think it's now the third adaptation of Jerusalem's Lot, aka Salem's Lot. So, let's just adjust the picture on screen, because again, I was a bit lax at doing that. Salem's Lot, 2024. Feature film adaptation. There we go. Salem's Lot is a 2024 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Gary Doberman, based on the 1975 novel by Stephen King. Film stars Lewis Pullman, Mackenzie Lee, Alfred Woodard, John Benjamin Hickey, Bill Camp, Jordan Preston Carter, Nicholas Cravetti, Spencer Treat Clark, William Sadler, and Pilar Aspect. It's the first feature film adaptation of the book, preceded by miniseries versions from 1979 and 2004. The plot centres on a writer who returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration, only to discover the presence of a vampire. The film was announced in 2019. It was shot in 2021 with additional photography in 2022, but the release of the film had been delayed multiple times. So we've received a cinematic release, a theatrical release, I should say, in the UK, but it's actually gone directly to Max in America. I don't think it's had a cinematic release over there. So we'll read a bit about the initial plot, and then we'll kind of get into my highs, lows, and my score. Writer Ben Mears returns to his hometown, Jerusalem's Lot, to write a book about his childhood. He befriends and starts a romantic relationship with Susan Norton, a local who is an overbearing mother and dreams of leaving town. Meanwhile, high school student Mark Petrie finds himself the target of a school bully and meets school teacher Matt Burke. A strange European man called Straker opens an antique store in town and moves into the long-abandoned Marston house, which has a history of murders. Straker has a large coffin shipped into the house and placed in the basement. Straker kidnaps one of Mark's friends, Ralphie, and sacrifices him to his master, a vampire called Kurt Barlow. Search party is unsuccessful in finding the boy, and the residents blame newcomer Ben. An unseen creature attacks Ralphie's brother Danny, and he later dies from pernicious anemia. After his funeral, Danny emerges from his coffin, now a vampire, and bites grave digger Mike. So, previously, yes, there have been two adaptations. Quite a famous one from 1979, was that? 1979. And then the less famous, less liked, but I actually really enjoy it, 2004 miniseries starring Rob Lowe. The book itself is one of my favourites. I do need to do a reread of it, but I really enjoy the novel Salem's Lot. It's where Stephen King really hit a great note of having a novel rich with characters, with building a lore of the developments of this infestation of vampirism, but it wasn't super long. Like, I think the novel was 439 pages, which pretty short for a Stephen King book. Now, I think the approach previously had been, with a lot of Stephen King adaptations, doing it as a miniseries. I think that's twofold. One, there was probably apprehension of how well it would do in cinemas with these sort of earlier releases. And two, the length of the source material, trying to condense that down into like a 1.5 hour, 2 hour film is a bit of a task. You're going to have to chop out quite a lot of it and make a lot of changes. Sometimes we have great successes, other times we have real bad messes. It swings and roundabouts. We're not always going to get The Green Mile. We're going to sometimes get, Graveyard Shift or It Chapter 2. There's going to be ones that we don't like quite so much. With Salem's Lot, I'd heard real mixed things about it, but I was excited to watch it. I love the source material. The first thing to kind of mention with this film is it's 2 hours, but it is quite pacey. And I don't necessarily think that's a great thing. In terms of, we do cover a fair amount. It does kind of go through a lot of the beats of the book. There's a fair amount of changes. There is quite a lot that are cut out in terms of supporting characters. But we do move along at a pretty rapid pace. I'm just trying to see which is the actor that I. Yeah, there he is. So we move along at quite a rapid pace, and I do think that it feels in places as though this infestation is a little bit too rapid for my liking. I think one of the things that stood out so much with the book is how it's minor things occurring over time that develop the suspicion of our core characters, whereas in this it's like boom, 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 shit, there's vampires. Oh, there's vampires? Yeah, there's vampires. Right, what do we do? They didn't feel like there was that much disbelief. That wasn't that much questioning. It was very much quick to kind of go, well, damn, if you say it's a vampire, I believe it's a vampire. There's also a few little changes which I think, okay, that kind of worked as an audience device. It's a little bit kind of corny. So to ward off vampires, you would use a crucifix, and that's something they do in the film. But the crucifix is to show that, you know, they are powerful against the vampire. Light up. Kind of like Sting in Lord of the Rings when orcs are nearby. And it's useful. It looks kind of good, but I also thought, yeah, okay. Lord of the Rings was my first thought. The vampires themselves, I think, look pretty decent. I like the glowing eyes. The fangs look pretty nasty. I like the fact that this has the element of hypnotism, which is something that doesn't get featured that much in Tales of Vampirism, but it is a key component of vampire lore. That down in the performances, I mean, the guy that plays Ben Meir, Lewis Pullman, is fine. He's very middle of the road. I don't think he's got an especially standout role. Mackenzie Lee is pretty good as the love interest. I quite like the Doctor, Alfred Woodard. I will have to say, though, I wasn't that impressed with Johann Philipp, or Pilau, Aspect, who I recognised as Euron Greyjoy from Game of Thrones. He was a bit too theatrical as Straker. And I get the Straker role is a bit theatrical. I mean, in the 2003, 2004 miniseries, we had Donald Sutherland. But yeah, I think he stood out a little bit in this for the wrong reasons. It's not super gory, really. There's a couple of decent vampire attack moments in it, and there's a nice little reveal, a nice little set piece reveal later on, where a moment of earlier exposition in the film comes back to prove kind of a final confrontation site later on. I quite like that. And I have to say the vampire Barlow did look menacing. Like, he did genuinely look like a creepy sort of final boss. And his introduction when he approaches Ralphie was pretty scary, I would have to say. Not that I was physically scared, but that was a pretty well done moment for inciting a bit of terror. I dug that. I will have to say there were some chatty Cathy sat behind us for the screening who talked throughout the film. There were these middle-aged women, and one of them was a bit of a comedian. And at one point, I did have to sort of utter "shut the fuck up," and it went quiet for about 5 minutes, and then she kind of cracked up again with her quips here and there. Nothing offensive, but it's just, you're at the cinema. I didn't come to hear, stand up at the Apollo. Be quiet. But the film on the whole, I think, is just it's decent, but it's not going to stand out in the world of brilliant Stephen King adaptations. I don't know if they had to cut down a lot. I do feel that the story does just serve better as a two-parter. Whether the fandom is there for Salem's Lot for 2 films, like there would be for It, I'm not too sure, because with something like It, you have a very distinct time period. You don't have that with Salem's Lot. It's over the course of time, this progression of infestation, develops and swallows the town. That's not really. There's not really a way you could split that into 2 films. So I think maybe a mini-series does just work better with this story. But on the whole, I enjoyed it. I just thought it was generally just a fine film. 6 out of 10 for Salem's Lot. It's all right. It's good. Anyway, that's it for the reviews. We're now going to jump ahead, or jump back, to a recording where I had a chat with the Gruff about the David Gordon Green Halloween sequel series. Hey, ghouls and fiends, we are back with our featured presentation, something we mentioned on some recent shows. As it is spooky season, we can't have an October month go by where we don't talk about Halloween, and we can't have a general month go by or week go by that we don't talk about Halloween ends. So, with that in mind, I am joined by the Gruff. Hey, Gruff.
Hey Tezz, you alright?
I'm all
How are
good.
you?
I'm all good, thank you, dude. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Plodding on and all that, you know. Um, Living my best life when I'm not working anyway, that is, so.
Well,
But yeah, no, I'm good.
we've spoken a few times about, you know, the Halloween series, both huge Halloween fans, and we're both very vocal at the time of its release about one of the particular entries. And I don't know about you, Gruff, but like I only had seen this once and at the time of the release, and I should preface that we're not talking just about one film. We're taking this opportunity to reapproach and reevaluate the David Gordon Green Halloween sequel trilogy. It's a very divisive trilogy with entries that some people love more than others and some people hate more than others.
Wonder
But
which ones they are in particular. That's what we're going to get onto, I guess.
that is, yeah. I mean, the one which, and we won't talk too much about it now because we'll get to it later on, but the one that I just couldn't, for the life of me, couldn't bring myself to rewatch until recently was Ends. Now, until this little project we're doing now, had you given it a rewatch, or had you only seen it the once and that was enough back at release?
No, I had only seen that one one time, and I'd also only seen Kills one time as well. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, so we got some stuff to talk about there.
We
Uh,
have.
but
We have.
I did. Lucky for me, I owned the original and Kills. Um, so I was able to get them. Netflix was my go-to for ends because I couldn't bring myself to pay for it. So,
Well, you
so
know,
good old Netflix come to
we
my
have
aid.
these streaming services. They should come in useful every so often, especially if it comes to watching a film we just don't want to pay for. So
Yeah, exactly.
so with this in mind, coming up to when Halloween 2018 came about, David Gordon Green. Now, prior to this, the Halloween sequels and remakes had been really a mixed bag, but arguably the quality hadn't really been reached since the original. You know, there's sequels that some people love more than others. You know, I've got a real soft spot for Halloween 4 and Halloween 6, which a lot of people hate. It's the Scream version of the Halloween series, but I dug it. But we'd had, you know, the Rob Zombie films, for better or worse. Some
Oh yeah.
parts, yeah. So the series had been on a bit of a downturn, and then David Gordon Green, traditionally an indie comedy director, came along with Danny McBride also writing with him to give us Halloween 2018. So what I want to first ask, Gruff, when this came out, when you first saw 2018's Halloween, which I still don't like that it's just called Halloween and it's a sequel to Halloween.
Halloween, yeah.
Just a bit confusing. What were your like initial reactions when you first watched 2018?
Um, so for me, I had not really massively been into the Halloween films as I was younger. So my kind of go-tos was always like the Freddy films, you know, kind of Jason. They were always my go-to. And it's only when I've rewatched the original, the original, um, probably about 10 years ago. Um, I was like, okay, yeah, that I could totally get why heralded as like this amazing piece of kind of filmmaking. Not even in regards as to horror in general, but just an amazing piece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I say, I've not really seen a lot of the other sequels for, kind of good or bad, as you said. And at the time when this came out, I had a unlimited card that I used to use for, kind of like the cinema. So I would go as much as I kind of wanted to. And to be honest, I think that's probably the only reason I saw this at the cinema, because it was at that time where I'd literally go to the cinema to watch pretty much anything. So I was like, okay, I'll go into it with an open mind. I don't really know much about Halloween, but I ended up, kind of going to, kind of watch it, and I was utterly and completely blown away with how much I enjoyed it. I know I've been on this show before gushing about how much I like this film, and always am. Like when I saw this at the cinema, I was just blown away with how much I enjoyed it. I just thought it was amazing, totally amazing. I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And I went around telling everyone, trying to get everyone to watch it. I don't really have a lot of friends in general that like a lot of horror, so it's quite hard to get people to actually watch it. But yeah, I was utterly blown away with this film, and then that's when I then started to read up, kind of about the filmmaker, the director, and what the plans were. But I was massively impressed with this film. I loved it. I love it. I love it now still. Spoiler for women. Yeah, it's just an amazing. I love this film so much. That's why I've got a picture on my wall and an
Oh,
action kind of
excellent.
figure. And yeah, cool.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I'd been a huge fan of Halloween. Halloween was the original Halloween was the first kind of horror film I ever saw on BBC Two, and it really just kind of set me off down that path. Made me a big fan of John Carpenter, and so I sought out other films of his that I would then catch and realize that Jesus, this guy's got quite an incredible look to his films and a great filmography. And I remember when this was announced, I'd heard, okay, well, Jamie Lee Curtis is back. Okay, we've seen Laurie Strode return in H2O, which is pretty good, in Resurrection, which was awful, one of the worst ones. Um, but we've got her back. We've also got John Carpenter back involved, and that automatically piques my interest because it's the man, the myth, the legend is involved in some capacity. And yeah, when I first saw this, I was just absolutely kind of blown away because it just felt like we had that feeling back of it's Halloween night. We're not just retreading the old ground. We've got a legitimate believability of how Michael is still around. Yeah, we're ignoring sequels, and that's something where I guess you have to kind of assume, well, the audience are going to be aware of the original because it's legendary. They're not necessarily going to be aware of the various sequels, so we can ignore them and we can use dialogue to kind of cover up what's occurred. He went on a rampage, or killed 3 people or 4 people in '78, and he's been locked up ever since. So story-wise and everything, I just really loved it. I thought they did a great job of mixing modern effects abilities without going at this stage too over the top. And we had that intrigue of, yes, this is a man, flesh and blood, but there's moments where he can just do things that you can't necessarily explain, such as lifting someone up with one hand. You'd think, okay, then he's really strong. It doesn't necessarily make him ridiculously strong. And in the original, he gets shot 7 times and falls off a ledge, and then he walks away. So keeping those things in mind, there's this believability still there, which isn't going too crazy. So for me, initial viewing of this just ticked all the boxes. Is straight away my favourite sequel in the whole kind of catalogue of Halloween films.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I've not really seen a great deal of them. I know I've seen Halloween 2, Halloween 3 I've seen, which everyone seems to have seen, which I thought was actually quite good. I quite liked Halloween 3.
Mm.
Um, H2O I've seen, and I think that might be about it, to be honest. I've not really seen the rest of them. But like you, I think maybe not long before I had seen it, that's when I noticed that, kind of John Carpenter was involved again.
Mm.
I like pretty much all his other stuff that I've seen. So I was like, okay, maybe we're actually going to be on something here. Um, yeah, I mean, I thought it's a perfect blend of is he, kind of supernatural, he's just really strong, um, and it ups kind of like the violence and the kills. But everything, I don't know, I find it quite odd to just, I really like how kind of brutal that he is a lot of the time. Like the kills, because let's be honest, if you like these sort of films, a lot of the reasons you like it is because of the kills. Um, a lot of the kills were really, really cool, and they're so brutal. He just comes across like a monster, um, absolute unit. Like, um, you got the part where you got the podcaster lady that's in the toilet, and he comes in, and the music stops. All you can hear is like the clunk, clunk, clunk of his boots on the floor.
Mm.
Like that tension, and that build up. Um, and then obviously it gets to kind of like the death scenes in the toilet with the teeth and ramming the guy's head into the wall and smashing the toilet door on his. It's, like, Jesus Christ, this guy's not holding back.
No, it's brutal.
He's yes, very very brutal. And it's just kind of like like I would say one of my other kind of favourite parts. Um, I've probably said this multiple times, but where he walks from house to house, just literally kind of killing people, casually walking along the street, walks in, casually kills someone, walks back out again, sees
Yeah.
someone, walks in. Yeah.
Was there anything that you can remember from when you first saw 2018 that at the time you thought, not necessarily that you disliked? I mean, if there was anything you disliked, then sure. But if there was anything when you first watched it that you thought, all right, okay, could have done without that. Was there any kind of, I guess, negatives when you first watched this?
No, to be honest, I mean, it was a couple of years ago, but to be honest, no. I think I was just blown away with how much I enjoyed it. I don't think I was expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. So I think that kind of made me quite kind of jaded in that sense that I was
Hmm.
just blown away with how much I enjoyed it. I can't say I remember any kind of kind of negatives or anything personally. How about you? Have you got anything that you thought
So,
at the time?
so I've got no. I hate to use the word negatives because we'll have more of them, I think, later on. Um, there were no negatives on my initial viewing of 2018, but there was something which I think I didn't notice so much, which I did on my recent repeat viewing. So I'll kind of jump ahead to this most recent kind of reevaluation. Um, so again, I love this film. There's tons that stands out to me. It still holds up. Like you say, the tension when he approaches the bathroom, and you got the female podcaster in the bathroom stall by herself, the male one finding the guys, the workmen who have been brutally murdered, and trying to get there to rescue her, and just gets his head bashed in. Loads of great moments of tension. I think there's only one bit that I found funnier when I first saw it, and I found it initially a little jarring this time, even though I knew it was coming. But I think it was one of the moments of humour. Like, I think humour's done very well in this. It's great to ease the tension. Like, there's the moment with the two cops in the cop car talking about their dinner, their lunchbox, which I think is still quite funny. But it's the moment when the blonde girl, I can't remember her name. I'll have a quick look at the cast of characters. Vicky, I think it's Vicky.
Oh, Vicky, yeah,
She's
that's it, yeah.
she's babysitting. The interactions with the kids she's babysitting are very funny. But it's when we get the moments coming up to her death when she's trying to close that bedroom door. And we've got a very creepy scene because it's like, oh, why isn't the door closing? And then she opens it and Michael's there. And then you got the kid is still doing kid lines of like, oh shit, Dave, you got to get the fuck out of here. Those sort of things, which I think initially I thought, oh, this kid's really funny. And I think he still is funny.
Yes, yeah.
But I think this time, when we're going into a moment of terror, and then he's still kind of getting quips, I just noticed it a bit more this time, which I never did before. And I think it wasn't anything that I'd call like a negative. Like it didn't ruin the scene for me. I think I just found it a little more jarring because I think I was paying closer attention this time, and I thought, okay, we're now into the scary period, so I don't need those kind of like quips, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I totally get kind of what your point there, to be fair.
Yeah, that would be the only
Yeah.
thing for me that I think on my repeat viewing. I mean, everything else, like, it wouldn't change my score. I still think this is like, I guess, like a solid 9, easy 9,
Oh,
because
all day long.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think performances, the effects, and everything of this are great. And I think one moment that just still forever stands out to me in this and on repeat viewings, and I even look forward to it on the repeat viewings. And that is the moment where Alison, she's left the party because her boyfriend's been a bit of a douche, getting off with that tiger girl, and she's walking home, being walked home by Oscar,
Yeah.
who then is in the courtyard, and he eventually gets killed on the gate. But it's the moment when Alison returns back, and we get that new bit of score from John Carpenter and his son, which has got this really cool effect, like a siren, but it's not a siren; it's a guitar. Um,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
but that moment when that music comes in, it's just like this feels like it's been part of the franchise from the start, but it's brand new. Like I thought it was very innovative and a great way to not just hang on the the traditional Halloween theme.
Yeah, no, that is quite a cool little music motif, actually. Yeah. As soon as you started saying, yeah, I know exactly which kind of part of music that you're talking about. Um, that is really cool. Um, I can say for me, one of my kind of favourite parts, still, would be when the podcasters visit Michael at the
Mm,
kind of asylum hospital place, um, and which is quite creepy anyway, and it's very strangely kind of designed, isn't it? Where you've got like a checkerboard.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite get why they chose that, but having watched it multiple times, I think it works for some bizarre reason. I don't know why you would have that, but I think
No.
it works in terms of a film. But I love that, kind of scene where they pull the mask out, and the guy pulls the mask out,
Mm,
and you hear the wind slowly starts to pick up, and you see the guy with the umbrella, his little quiff of hair starts blowing where the
yeah.
wind's picking up, and then the dogs start whining, and then the prisoners start going a bit crazy, getting louder and it gets louder, the tension and the music builds up and up and up and up and up, and it's like because of the mask, and you see the camera looking at Michael, but he doesn't really move. And I remember kind of thinking at the time, kind of at the time when I originally saw it, having not seen a lot of the other kind of sequels, I was like, "Is power from the mask? Is the mask some kind of kind of supernatural thing?" Because I didn't know. I was like, "Why
Mm.
the hell has he just pulled a mask out and everything's going like crazy? The dogs are going mental, the prisoners are going crazy." But I always, like you, that's the one scene that I kind of look forward to. I
Yeah.
love that scene.
So I think we're both pretty much in agreement. Our scores haven't changed. Enjoyment
No.
still the same, high standard. So we'll then move along to its sequel, the 2021 release, Halloween Kills. So after Halloween had been released, and it was a huge success. We then got the announcement that there were two films. I'm pretty sure the announcement came after the release. I don't think it was announced as a trilogy of Halloween films, but I distinctly remember the buzz of, right, here's an announcement. We're getting a sequel and a third film. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, I'm excited for a sequel. But you're telling me that there's two films coming, so I'm automatically thinking, well, what happens in the second film isn't really necessarily going to matter because we
Yeah,
know that there's going to be a follow on. And I know you can always say with horror franchises, of course there's going to be another film, you know, but we've had 10 years since a Jason film, so it's not always the case. But
yeah.
I do remember sort of feeling a bit like, okay, I'm hyped, but I'm also a bit like, okay, the events of this film may not necessarily matter too much, or we may not get a definitive sort of ending. And I think because we had what on appearance seemed to be a definitive ending for Halloween 2018, that made me a little nervous. So when you heard that Kills was announced and Kills and Ends together, how were you feeling? Were you just like pure hype? Were you like, oh right, how did you feel about two films coming?
So when I originally heard that they were making, kind of like a sequel, I was, kind of pretty hyped. But then just like you, um, straight away I was kind of thinking, what, like why are they already kind of telling us that there's going to be a third film? Is it not kind of better to like? I understand that they've maybe got a plan and a basic idea what they want to do.
Hmm.
It's a bit, I don't know, a bit brazen, and you never know what could go on. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not too keen on that way of kind of doing films. Um, but yeah, I was kind of up for kind of giving it a go. But I think because I like the original one so much, I was kind of telling myself, "Oh, it's not going to be as good. It's going to be that sequel thing where sequel isn't as good."
Hmm.
But I mean, I was kind of hyped for it. I must admit, I was hyped for it. So I'll give it that.
So when Halloween Kills came out, your initial viewing of it, I guess, kind of a multi-part question. One, did you go in it with expectations, and how were those expectations met, if so? And two, just generally, what was your kind of enjoyment level on your initial viewing of Halloween Kills?
So expectations. I didn't really know what to expect because I think because I liked the first one so much, as I said, I was expecting not to like it that much, which is kind of a bad thing, really, because it can kind of jade your view when you watch something,
Mm.
um, which is kind of a good reason why you rewatch stuff. But um, I, I mean, I guess I kind of went into it thinking I'm not going to like this. It's not going to be as good. It's that usual kind of kind of sequel thing. How can it be as good as like the first one? Because that's how much I liked the first film. Um, so and then when I originally watched it, uh, yeah, I mean, kind of came out of it the way that I thought I would. I was just kind of disappointed um, in a couple of ways. Just I can't even remember back now. There was a few ideas, few characters I found quite annoying. Um, so you've got the what are they? The nurse and the doctor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I found those characters really irritating. Granted, it was quite cool that they were because I only realised when I rewatched it the other, like recently, that they're actually on the original film, aren't they? They're like living next door to. Yeah, I never realised that at the time when I originally watched it. That was a cool little connection.
Yeah.
And I did like that it was literally the night after, um, which I quite enjoyed. Because having watched the first 8 Friday, kind of the 10th films recently, I quite like that you get a few of them like part 2, 3, 4 are all connected, like they're all one after another.
Mm.
So when I rewatched this recently, I quite like that because it literally goes from one film straight into the next one.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that at the time. But there's three words that get spoken a lot in this film.
Yes.
Um, and I don't know why it bugs me as much as it does. I think by the sound of it, from our past discussions, it bugs you and other people as much as it does. Um,
Yeah,
I found that,
yeah.
yeah,
To be honest, I think the thing that annoyed me about that the most, and it's something that gets chanted in the film, and that is, of course, the phrase "evil dies tonight." But there's one particular utterance of it that stands out because of it. It just seems such an awkward thing to say. And that is when Tommy Doyle first decides to sort of go outside to investigate, because there's been these reports of there's been all these killings, and Michael Myers escaped from a bus and he's still at large. No one knows what he looks like, but it's all going down on Halloween night. There's been like a bit of a survivors meeting at this bar and all this stuff. And it's as he gets this baseball bat to go outside as the big tough guy, and he says something about like, he says, I can't remember what it is that he says, but then Nancy Stevens, who returns as Marion Chambers from the first film, and she was also in Halloween 2 and H2O, which are ignored now, she then responds with, "An evil dies tonight." And I know it becomes a chant in the film, and on my initial viewing and viewings, it bugged the hell out of me. But it's the way that she delivers it in that moment that just seems so like, oh God. It's such an eye roll for me, just because it sticks out as such an awkward thing to say in that moment. Um, I mean, generally, I'll kind of just say, like, my initial viewing of this, I went with my friend Dean Jovi, friend of the show. He appeared in one of the early shows doing a Halloween tier list, and we both loved the Halloween 2018. Saw that in cinema, and we both went to watch Halloween Kills. My hype levels were very high. As much as I was a bit like, oh, we're getting two films coming, I'd prefer to have, just here's the next part of the story. Let's see how that does, and if we can continue it, great. But let's not just go, we're doing this film, we're going to continue it anyway. But my general hype level for this was really high. And when I came out of the cinema, there were moments that were just, whoa, really high up for me. But it just left me with a bit of something missing. The secret sauce wasn't there. And I thought to myself, okay, if I had to give this a score on initially coming out of the cinema, 7.5, I think. But I will need to sleep on it. And the longer I slept on it and thought about it, my score dipped down to like a 7, and then maybe like a 6.5. And that's just because, like, we got highs in terms of the flashbacks to Halloween night 1978 to show
oh
what
yeah,
happened to Michael.
what about those?
I thought they were brilliant. Like,
Incredible, yeah.
it had the look and tone, like, and the guy that they had as the stand-in for Loomis, I thought looked brilliant. The explanation as to how he was captured, all that stuff I thought was great. But yeah, the evil dies tonight thing bugged the hell out of me. And some of the character decisions at the time bugged the hell out of me, such as the very end, Judith going back into the house.
Yeah.
It's the moments where it's like Michael Myers is Jason now, because he's taking on 10 people at a time, multiple times. There's the fireman, then there's the mob later on. But then they're kind of counteracted with some pretty damn good kills in this film, like the kill of Little John or Big John, the two lovers that
Big
now live
John.
in his house. Yeah,
Big John and Little John. Here we go.
the
I was going to
kill
get onto them.
the kill of one of them, the one that he thumbs the eyes out of. I just thought, oh my god, that was just brutal. But yeah, for me, it was just a bit of a mixed feeling of there's some really good things happening in this film, but then it's like they've really leaned into the supernatural, and it just felt kind of, I don't know. I think I just had real mixed feelings about this at the time. We've done a rewatch though, Gruff. So, in your recent rewatch of this for the show, has your opinion changed, or is it still the same?
So I would say my opinion has changed in the sense that I actually enjoyed it more this time than I did the last time. As I said, I've only ever seen it once, kind of previously, um, and I guess sometimes it's probably that thing that you said where you kind of watch it and you're like, I like that. I think I need to sleep on it. And obviously, I've had a good few years to sleep on it and kind of chat about it with you. Um, but then having rewatched it, knowing where it's going to be going, and not having that expectation, or maybe in my head automatically kind of telling myself it's going to be rubbish, it's not going to be as good, it's not going to be as good. Not having that, maybe that helps. Kind
Mm.
of maybe that makes some kind of a difference. Now, don't get me wrong, it's like you. Um, I guess I was the same as you at the time, and also now I would say my opinion is the same as you. It is a bit of a mixed bag. Um, still think it's a mixed bag. Um, it, I still find some of the stuff quite irritating. Some of the characters, uh, Tommy particularly, I find him he's just a complete arsehole, that guy. I find him he's just really annoying. The nurse and the doctor, Big John and Little John. Guess it's kind of amusing, but yeah, find I found them quite irritating to a point. Um, uh, I just kind of felt like we spent little bit too much time with those two cats. I mean, they're only in it briefly. I get that, but
Mm.
yeah, I just I remembered the kills with those two characters. So I was just like, just hurry up and get to the kill. Um, and then yeah, for me, um, the other thing that I had a problem with at the time was, like you said, it's a mixed bag. I liked a lot of the kills, but I felt really confused as to what was going on with Michael. Like, is he kind of overpowered? Is he some kind of supernatural entity now, like Jason? Which is what I thought at the time. I was like, I don't quite get what they're kind of going for. Um, and I still left me when I watched it recently. I was still kind of the same. I don't really I don't quite know what they were going for with that. He just is he just some sort of unstoppable kind of machine? And then I was like, at the time, oh, maybe they're going to answer that in part three, which we'll get onto.
Mm.
Um, uh, yeah, but I mean, I would say my score's probably gone up. So I think originally I probably would have gave it maybe a six, or kind of like a kind of 6.5. I would probably give it a kind of seven, maybe a 7.5 now.
Yeah.
Um, like you, I would totally agree. Um, it is a mixed bag, but I can't say that sat there and I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it, and I kind of feel like I enjoyed it more this time around than like the last time.
I'd agree with that.
I'm quite interested to see what your thoughts are now on your kind of rewatch.
Yeah, so I watched Kills and Ends back to back yesterday, and I certainly found that the things that bugged me when I initially watched it, and I did a rewatch of it a few years ago, so I have seen it once since. But the things that bugged me previously didn't really bug me quite so much this time. I mean, yeah, the initial bit with Marion saying "an evil dies tonight," I thought, oh, fuck off. Um, but as it goes, I I did find the things that bugged me weren't quite as bad, and I found an even greater appreciation for some of Michael's kills, because I think this time, rather than me watching it and thinking, "Oh God, yeah, just it's not as good as 2018, and what have they done with the story?" I looked at it more as, okay, so Michael's had in the previous film 40 years of being tied up like a rabid animal tied up, and he's finally out and going on this rampage, and that this he came pretty damn close to dying, and this is Michael pissed off. And I guess this time I kind of thought, okay, let's assume that there is something supernatural, which whether we're ever gonna, well, we're not, whether there was ever an intention to explain what that is. If we kind of just look at this as, he is now pissed off and he is just trying to get back home, and they had this whole story of he would just look out of his sister's window, and is he looking at the town or is he looking, at himself? And adding that little thing in, which initially I thought, it's just a bit dumb, but now I thought, okay, I can see that they're trying to add a layer to him. I dug it. I thought the kills were good. Some great moments. I really liked the moment when those obnoxious kids are at the park, and Lindsay and the car kind of come across them and try and get them away, and then Michael just butchers them all, and Lindsay basically has to hide from him. I thought that was really well done, and had some really cool kills there. As mentioned, the Big John Little John moments were pretty good, and I found them quite endearing. Is spent maybe a little bit too long with them, but I thought they were kind of funny. And even the mob moment, which the first time I saw this, I remember thinking, oh, fucking hell. So he's been shot multiple times in the chest, stabbed in the back, stabbed with a pitchfork through the back, beaten in the face with like a baseball bat and all this stuff. Like, I remember thinking at the time, first time, oh, Christ, okay, let's go. But this time, I don't know. I guess this time I was a little bit more open to he is just this force of pure darkness and rage, and it's like, okay, well, he'll take this battering, but give him a moment and then he'll just take that opportunity. And I really quite enjoyed pretty much from the moment when he corners Alison, her boyfriend, in the house and batters the boyfriend. Like, that was a gnarly kill.
Yeah.
Going out to the mob. And even the moment, which I remember thinking was so dumb the first time, when Alison goes back in the house, this time, with the supernatural potential, open-mindedness, let's say, there, her seeing the reflection of child Michael in the window, of course that would lead you to go up the stairs, because you think, who's that up there? Like, I don't know. I was quite surprised in myself that the things that bugged me quite a lot the years ago that this came out, I didn't really mind. So yeah, similar to you, I think I'd give this an easy 7.5 now. Yes, it would have been good if we had Paul Rudd back as Tommy Doyle, because he was in talks, but scheduling wasn't available. So Paul
I never
Rudd,
knew that.
yeah, he played Tommy Doyle in Part 6, one of his first sort of screen roles.
Okay.
And yeah, there were talks, but scheduling didn't work out. He would have been a lot better than the Tommy Doyle we got. I still didn't like Tommy Doyle.
Yeah. I found him quite irritating, that guy. I mean, I guess you probably are kind of meant to, at a point when people are trying to, kind of shout him and tell him, and he's just not listening. So that's part of his character, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I will say, in terms of, kind of kills in this film, I would say it's probably the most brutal of the three films, and I rewatched them with Carol Ann, all kind of three of them. I think she's seen all three. Yeah, she has seen all three previously. And she, kind of said to me that out of the three films, she enjoyed this, kind of like the most. I was quite surprised.
Wow.
It's like, really? But yeah, she just said that she liked the kills more. But so in regards to what you were saying about the mob scene, she kind of mentioned the same thing. She was like, okay, so you're kind of you're trying to say to me that he's not kind of, he doesn't have powers, etc. Let's just say he's incredibly like angry and raged. So he stands there, he lets these people attack him, and then you give him a moment, and it's just that rage and anger comes back because of what you've just kind of done to him. It's like an adrenaline thing. If he's a human,
yeah,
then he's going to have a burst of, kind of adrenaline. And if he's that strong and that intense and brutal anyway, then how's he going to be when he gets like an adrenaline thing?
exactly.
I was like, fair enough. I was like, okay, yeah, that is. So that probably helped me that scene as well. So, but yeah, I must admit I did enjoy this a lot more than the last time I saw it.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. I was surprised. I was kind of thinking I'd be like, okay, we're gonna have some cool kills and that's it. But no, yeah, I enjoyed this certainly a bit more. And that does then bring us to, I guess, the divisive one, the one which, if people have listened to the show over the years, will know that we have opinions on. And
Oh boy.
this one I didn't go and watch at the cinema, and I think that's because, well, whilst doing the show at the time, I remember when news reports were coming out of plot details, and I was hearing these plot details and thinking, what? And that just, when they were releasing elements of, oh, this is kind of what the story is about, I thought, oh my god, okay, my interest is dropping massively in this. So when this did come out, I watched it online via means, as opposed to going to the cinema, just because I wanted to save my money, which I don't, I don't endorse that, but we're going through a economic crisis at the time, so that's my excuse. But we're talking about the 2022 release, Halloween Ends. So Gruff, let's tear the band-aid off and talk about when this first came out and your first viewing of this. How were you when it comes to hype going into Ends? Did you have any, and what were your feelings coming out of watching it?
So to be honest, I didn't really have much hype because I wasn't overly massively impressed with kills at the time. Um, and then, like you, by the sounds of it, um, which that would have been the time of Ministry of Horror anyway, wasn't it? So we must have been chatting about it. But like you, I started reading all this different stuff about what it, and I was just like, this, what the hell are they doing? Like, what's is this being, kind of directed and produced or written by a completely different person? Like, what's going on? It's yeah. And also like you, I um due to the economic crisis at the time, I was also feeling the pinch. I refused to go and see it at the cinema as well because I didn't want to waste my money. So, which I don't generally endorse either. So, but
No, but
yeah. So I yeah, so anyway, and then obviously I when I got round to watching this film, oh, yeah, yeah, I need a swig of this, kind of drink here, whiskey.
it,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't really know where to begin, to be honest. It's quite hard for me to put into words. I just really dislike this film. I, I, I really had no clue what they were thinking. Um, and it kind of felt, like I said, it felt like when I first started watching it, the first half hour, like it was written or kind of produced or kind of directed, whatever, by someone completely different.
Mm,
Um, Unlike what they did with the Star Wars prequels, the last lot.
yeah.
Was it like J.J. Abrams did The Force Awakens, and then they had I can't remember the guy's name. English guy, I believe, did
Oh, is it
the next one.
Ryan Johnson?
Yes, I believe that is. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he went completely off and was a bit weird. And then they brought J.J. Abrams back, and it was I was yeah. So I was just like, what the hell is going on with this film?
Yeah.
And as the film went on, I was so hang on, let me get this right. Jason Jason? It's because I've been watching Friday the
Yeah.
13th. Michael gets Lee. He loses two fingers. He gets stabbed. He gets whatever else happens to him, and then he gets up, kills all that huge mob of people within kind of a short time. Doesn't look like it's worn him out at all. Um, and then he goes into hiding for so many years, and then he's weak and yeah, I I didn't understand what they were trying to go for. I couldn't get my head around what exactly had happened. I get that it was years. in between those films. But I was like, why? Why has he gone from this Jason, a mortal killer that's unstoppable, to then hiding in, kind of like the sewers? Um, yeah, yeah. And then it gets to the point where he can't even put up a fight against this weedy guy, Corey Cunningham, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
Um, we're being a while talking about him, so I'll cut it short. Him, and is it Addison? His granddaughter's name.
Yeah.
So the relationship was very, very weird. I would say it was quite messed up. She acted like she'd been in love with him for like 5 years or something. I, I really didn't like it. I really, yeah, I didn't really like the film. Um, yeah, I don't really know what else to say.
So yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
For me, I remember, I tried to be open-minded at first with the story with Corey Cunningham, and the tragic event that kind of made him an enemy in the town. I mean, it's a very horrific event, but it was an accident at the end of the day. Just a very, very tragic one. Although the kid was quite annoying, but it was a tragic accident. Um,
incredibly annoying
yeah.
little dick.
Although I'll give them props, they were watching The Thing, which I liked. Just a little nod
Yes, well,
to
yeah,
to the original Halloween. They're watching The Thing from Outer Space, which
that's
The
right.
Thing
Yeah,
is a remake of, or a readaptation of. Um, but yeah, as that film progressed, I was like, okay, so he's getting bullied by these jocks, but they're not jocks; they're in the marching band. Would it not just make more sense for them to be jocks? Because is that just to show how pathetic he is that he's been bullied by the marching band?
yeah.
Okay,
Isn't it normally the jocks that pick on the marching band people in these
yeah,
films?
exactly. But yeah, so I guess maybe that's to show how low he is in the respect of the food chain. And then yeah, the introduction of Michael. And there were so many things on my initial viewing of this that I didn't like. I thought, okay, Laurie had been turned into this reclusive survivor over 40 years because of an event that happened where 3 of her friends were killed and she barely survived. And then within 3 years, after her number of friends and her daughter has been brutally murdered, she's like, I'm a writer now. I'm going to live my best life, live, laugh, love, all of that stuff.
Goes out to get her groceries. She's all
Yeah,
happy, smiling, flirting with the local
yeah.
sheriff.
There was things like that. There was also people's reactions to her, like the woman who blamed him because her sister had brutally been attacked in Halloween Kills, saying it's all Laurie's fault because she riled up that poor boy. And I was like, wait, what? What? How is she getting the blame for this? Okay, and all of that stuff. I didn't like that. I thought, yeah, Corey being dragged into the sewer, and then he has eye contact with Michael, and I didn't get what that was. Is it Michael seeing darkness in
Oh,
Corey? Is he
yeah.
transfer? Then Michael almost powering up, like he's this decrepit thing that can barely move, but he drags Corey into the sewer, and then he leaves him, and then he tries to grab him before he leaves. I just didn't get that. What was the point? If he's going to kill him, is he going to... yeah. To then, almost to the point when Corey brings in that guy who looks like he's in his 50s that was dating Allison. I didn't really quite get that. And it brings him in, and then Michael starts almost powering up by stabbing him. I thought, what am I watching here? But the only thing that my initial viewing that I could take away as a positive was when it does get going, there are some good kills, and I'm
Mm.
thinking specifically at the wrecking yard with the marching band. I thought that sequence was pretty good, and at the radio station with the little
Oh,
cameo
yeah.
from Darcy the Mail Girl from Joe Bob Briggs' drive-in show. She's the receptionist who gets stabbed up. But But my initial kind of viewing of this was like, I can't remember what I gave it on the show, but it can't have been more than like a
I
4 out
can't
of
either.
10, maybe a 3, 4 out of 10, just because I really did
Yeah,
quite dislike this.
yeah. I can't remember what I gave it. I mean, I believe if my memory's right, I believe I was on the show and
Mm.
we kind of discussed it. So we both must have given a score at the time, but I don't remember what it was. But I'm going to assume it was incredibly low.
So that brings us to this show. So we've done a rewatch. So rewatching Halloween Ends, Gruff, has your opinion changed? Are there things that you enjoyed more this time around? Are there things that you possibly disliked even more? Uh, talk me through your repeat viewing of this.
So all I've got to say is no, no, yes. That's it, Tez. I'm done. End of the show.
Thanks for
No.
watching, guys.
So yeah, so for me, we watched it with Carol Ann as well. Neither of us got any more out of it. I mean, for me, I can't say I enjoyed it anymore. Um, I found the first hour, 45 minutes or so, incredibly boring. I thought it was so boring, and I was thinking to myself, why are we focusing on these people? Like, why? Why? I don't get it. Um, so the thing with the kind of like this, yeah, with Corey, and I noticed the same as you. I don't think I quite noticed exactly what was going on. I watched it the first time around, but when I watched it yesterday, um, so yeah, he obviously grabs him and then looks in his eye, and I was like, okay, I still don't quite get it, but I was like, is he? So in my mind, I was kind of thinking, right, could it be that he's transferring part of his evil into Corey? Every time Corey kills, that then makes Michael stronger?
Hmm.
Or what happens if, well, I mean, I guess it does kind of, I was going to say, what happens if he keeps killing and he gets too strong and then he turns on Michael, which kind of does, I guess, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But then I noticed this time, I don't know if you did originally, I believe you just kind of said you did, but it does look like as he kills that first guy, the older guy that was, kind of dating the granddaughter, that it does look like he's kind of starts to power up. And I was like, okay, maybe I did kind of miss that. Maybe that is the general idea. I don't think I quite kind of picked that up at the time. Even so, I still think it's incredibly stupid. That's really not what I want to see in Michael Myers. Um,
Yeah.
the kills, once it does get going, the kills are good. It does have some good kills, but it's just too little, too late for me. Um, I've already have to, kind of sit through what I personally thought was quite a boring film up to that point with characters I don't like. I don't know what's going on. Um, But having said that, yeah, a couple of the deaths are really good, especially the kind of like the DJ guy.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly. I can't remember. Doesn't he kind of rip his jaw off or something? Rips his jaw down
He,
and cuts
he
his
he
tongue.
he cuts his tongue off. Yeah, I think he's been bashing his head and breaks his jaw, and then his tongue's
Oof,
hanging out, and he cuts it. I think for me, the one that
village.
that sticks out, and you don't even really see it clearly. It's more of a
But
pulled out,
yeah,
blurred
I
out
know.
shot as the blowtorch.
Blowtorch. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is. Oh yeah, I must admit, um, because I was so disappointed with that film and I'd only seen it once, I did kind of forget how good a few of the kills were. And when it got to that part with the blowtorch yesterday, I was like, "Oh!" I think I actively, kind of said Caroline out loud. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that was quite kind of brutal."
Well, I mean,
Um,
I'm going to be potentially controversial here. Um, I didn't necessarily like Halloween Ends, but I didn't hate it as much as I did the first time. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot that I still think is fucking dumb with this film. But I think if this wasn't a part 3 of a new trilogy, if this was a spin-off, or if this was a part 4 where we'd already had something connecting between kills and ends, then I think this could have been decent. I mean, there's still a lot wrong, but the focus on Corey, if Michael was already dead prior to this, I think wouldn't have been quite as bad. Because I do understand what they were kind of going for in terms of like evil is like an infection, and I did pay attention a bit more to the opening monologue where Laurie says that after the events of the 2018 massacre, there seemed to be an event every year where there was just like this need to. There's always this need for like evil in the town, and it spread and was infectious. And that because of this happening every year, that's when she'd sort of decided, I'm not going to just live in this bubble of fear. I want to kind of move on with my life and not be like this victim the whole time. And I thought, okay, I don't hate that quite as much as I did the first time. It stuck out like a sore thumb first time, but all right, okay, I sort of get it, I guess. All right. Still don't get her being blamed for what Michael did, because she was kind of warning people about him, and if she didn't cause him to get released, so if if she'd never even said anything about Michael Myers and never talked about Michael Myers being the boogeyman, he'd have still got out and he'd have still killed people. So I think her being blamed was dumb. The Corey character, hated it first time. This time, for the most part, I think was a little bit more interesting. And by that, I kind of think in terms of he's this kind of wholesome lad who there's one awful event happened, and then that's caused everyone in the town knows him, and he basically has to live this like kind of mummy's boy lifestyle where he can't talk and he can't let himself be himself because someone's going to recognize him and someone's going to point fingers, and it's just okay, I can kind of see that. So I think if we'd have gone down that route rather than and sort of continued down that route rather than the moment that he gets thrown off the bridge and then gets dragged into that sewer, kind of interesting. The moment when Michael pulls him into the sewer, okay, and he looks him in the eyes, didn't really get that. The whole sort of, but then him looking to Michael as if he wants to kind of learn. Okay, if he was looking at reports of these killings and using that as inspiration because he wants to lash out at the town that's hated him, all right, okay. But physically going to this person who only 3 years ago had killed about 40 people, I thought, so Michael's a mentor now? I don't buy that. And even more so to the point that he's kind of been helping Michael power up. They went and killed the doctor and his nurse at their house, and Michael lifts the nurse up like like a kill from the original film, stabbing through into the wall. Okay, he's powering up. He hangs about outside Laurie's house at one point, but doesn't do anything. Like, right, okay, right, whatever. But then, yes, we get these awesome kills from Corey a bit later on. Great, that's good. He wants to take on this mantle. He wants to use the mask and say, "Well, I'm powerful. I feel the power of these kills." But so much so that he runs into the sewer. Michael's just stood in the corner. Is that just what he does when he's not out killing? And basically pushes him over and pulls the mask off him like that. Just there wasn't even like a fist fight. It wasn't like he did anything to trick him. He just went, "I want that mask. Give me it." Throws him to the floor, takes the mask off. Also, we can get the little kind of Undertaker inspired from the first film sit up. And then the original time that I saw the film, when I got to the finale and they take him into that big meat grinder, I thought, fucking hell, I don't care. I don't care. This time, I still don't care. It does still feel like an incredible amount of overkill, but I guess he's come back from so much. What else can you do other than completely destroy the body? You know, when he's been shot, when he's been
Yeah.
stabbed. I mean, you could say just cut his head off, but they do the throat slash, the wrist slash, um, and put him into a meat grinder. Like, yeah, it's still incredibly over the top for the sake of it. But I guess this time, when he seems to seemingly come back from anything, you'd have to think, okay, what's the most extreme way you can do it? I mean, that's up there.
Yeah, yeah, you can't get much more extreme than that. And I guess, in terms of this film where I still don't know exactly what was going on, infecting another person with evil, making them go down that path. If he's chucked into a meat grinder,
Hmm,
it's not going to be happening, is it? So there is that.
no. Um, yeah, I mean, even though I'm saying that I don't feel as strongly negative about it as I did the first time, I mean, yeah, the whole thing with the love story with Corey and Allison, again, if that had been building up, okay, understandable. But it's in the space of about 2 or 3 days because they go to a
Yeah.
Halloween party very early on. I don't know how often Halloween parties happen way in advance of Halloween. I'd imagine not. So I can't remember if it says a date when it initially kind of starts, but it clearly states when it is Halloween night. So I think the evolution of the love story, I mean, whilst this time, okay, I do kind of understand Alison's perspective. Everyone close to her, other than her grandmother, brutally killed in front of her. And, you know, she barely survived it. And she can see someone who seems to be kind of innocent that has been made into like a monster. And, you know, there's that kind of understanding there and all that stuff. I get that it just felt incredibly rushed. But that being said, when Corey when Corey basically kills himself, although Michael then is still alive for Michael to break his neck. And I wonder if that's to say that this maybe there is something supernatural which is transferable, and maybe that's why he was still alive. I don't know. It wasn't very clear. I still didn't really understand. One, he stabs himself, I guess, to make Laurie lose her granddaughter because if her granddaughter thinks Laurie's killed her boyfriend, she would leave. Only for her to run away when she's been a bit petulant, I think, most of the film. And then she comes back conveniently at the last minute to help slash his things. I think she is still a weak point in this film, which is such a shame because Alison was a real standout, I thought, in the first two films.
Yes, she was. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I've not called on everything, but you know there are things that I don't hate quite as much as I did. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
I like them.
No, well, I mean, um, I must agree with you. It does feel incredibly rushed, like in regards to kind of like the love stuff. And I think that's probably a massive part of the reason why it just bugs me, that whole Corey and her stuff. It is just really, really, really rushed. Maybe if she'd been in a relationship or something with in a previous film, then wouldn't have had the previous kind of film that we got, I guess, if it had been that way. So, um, yeah, and like you said, it, maybe if they went along the path of kind of like Friday the 13th Part 5, where it's not actually, kind of Jason, spoilers, uh, that it wasn't actually him, it was someone else, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. Um, I mean, in terms of kind of viewing it, I wouldn't say I hate it anymore, but I can't say I've changed my mind on how I kind of feel about the film. Other than a couple of little bits, like I said, like the powering up thing, I don't think I quite noticed that before. Um, and maybe I did kind of miss what they were going for with transference of evil or something, and
Mm,
I don't know. I think for me, I just kind of found it really jarring that he was this big, kind of ass, unstoppable killer in the last film, and then they went into this, um, and they had him how he was, and I just kind of found it really jarring, and I still find it really jarring because like you, I watched Kills, and then I watched Ends, kind
mm.
of straight after. So,
I kind of feel that, like, 'cause you mentioned Star Wars earlier on, that the whole thing with Michael, where all of a sudden, he's gone from being this unstoppable killing machine to just, oh, he just disappeared that night, and then there's the odd disappearance. But other than that, we don't really know where he's been, why he's been away. Like, why would he just suddenly stop killing? And why, if it's a Halloween thing, why wouldn't he return the next year or whatever?
yeah,
It's kind of almost similar to, when it comes to let's not bother with an explanation. It's kind of almost similar to, is it Rise of Skywalker, where it's just like Palpatine's back somehow. Don't worry
yeah.
about what's been happening in the years since when he assumed he was dead. He's been gone for decades, but yeah, he's back now because
All you need to know is he's back.
somehow Palpatine's back.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It just kind of feel like it was a strange choice of kind of like a film
Mm,
make. I mean, granted, it is kind of different. Can't say that it's not. Um, I just kind of find it's a very very strange film to make after the last two,
yeah.
um, and I'd quite like to know exactly what they were aiming for and if they managed to pull off what they were aiming for, because I don't really think it really comes across very well. Like you said, I kind of get some of the ideas, but I don't think, maybe because it was rushed. Um, Maybe there was a longer cut with
Mm,
more kind of detail, more scenes. I mean, I will say if there's any, kind of modern film I'd like to watch a director's cut of, it would probably be this.
yeah.
Um, if there was ever such a thing, I don't know. It just the film feels quite rushed, and like I say, I'd quite like to know if they managed to pull off exactly what they were trying for, because I feel like it's just a bit of a little bit of a mess. It's a bit confusing. I don't quite get what's going on sometimes.
Well,
Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I'd read that there were a number of different planned events for the story, like for the finale. There was one where the idea was going to be that Laurie does actually commit the S word, which I think on streaming things you can't say. So what she kind of hints that she might do at one point in the film. Apparently, one of the original ideas was that she would do that, go down the Papa Roach last resort route. Um, Another idea had been that Corey would survive, or that Corey would redeem himself. And I think I'd read somewhere that the writers and director had sort of mentioned that as the story was going on, they could almost go down a choose your own adventure route, which I guess for a writing side of things may be interesting. But that just straight away tells me that there's no definitive plan for the story. Like, there's no, here's where we want to get to. It's kind of just like, well, we could do this, we could do that. Like, okay, what's the
Yeah.
story you're trying to tell? um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's. I think where I'd have probably given it, I don't know, maybe a 3 if I was being incredibly harsh. I can't remember at the time, like a 3 out of 10. I feel that I can probably now give this a 5 out of 10, but no more. I think it's a well shot film. It looks good. Jamie Lee Curtis is good in it, even though the plot itself and some of the motivations don't necessarily really make sense. But it has got some good kills, and I think that there could have been a decent story in there. But what we actually got is still pretty subpar. So I'm reevaluating. I'm giving it a 5, and I think that's the fairest I can be. I can't go higher than that because there are still a
Yeah.
number of things that I just didn't really like.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of a score, I would probably go 4.5. I mean, I was tempted to go kind of 5, but I'd say you're a little bit more positive than me, so I would maybe go for a 4.5. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would say, if you'd said any more than kind of 5, I'd say you're crazy, so you've prob
No, no. There's yeah, I can definitely say that I didn't hate it as much as I was expecting. Um,
No.
but that I thought I would just say, yeah, there were still moments that I just thought this could have been done so differently, or this just doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's not been a real turnaround. It's not like Kills where I went in it thinking, oh yeah, here we go, and actually
Yeah.
enjoyed it quite a lot. But yeah, we've done it, and I think we now probably don't need to talk about Halloween Ends now. I think we've kind of purged it from ourselves. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you, if I'm honest, I wouldn't say I hated it, no. I did go into it thinking, "This film's rubbish. I know I'm gonna hate it." I did, like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of find the first part of it quite kind of boring when I was
mm,
rewatching it. But I wouldn't say I hate it. It's not a badly made, kind of film. Um,
yeah,
does have its good points, but definitely, without a doubt, the weakest of the 3.
definitely,
But
definitely.
yeah, I think we're kind of, kind of done with the Halloween jokes thing of, every time. I don't really like to bring up again the Halloween thing, but let's go. It's Halloween. If we compare it to Halloween, so yeah, maybe we should be done with that.
I think we
Let it rest
can
in peace.
I think we can retire Halloween Ends from our slander, or from mentions. I think just mentions in general.
Yeah,
All right, Gruff. Thank you very much once again for coming onto the show. This is going to be kind
you're
of
welcome.
dropping into another show that I've yet to record, where I will be reviewing Salem's Lot. Although you'll probably already heard my review of Salem's Lot, so let me know what you like, what you liked or didn't like about it, and then hopefully the next week's show I will have a review of Terrifier 3. I'm hoping to get to the cinema to watch that. Gruff, thank you very much for joining. Um, what are your socials if you want people to reach out?
So if you wanna, yeah, if you wanna get in touch, just hit me up on Twitter, the Gruff 999. If you want to talk about anything horror related, um, if you want to tell me I'm wrong about ends, I would love to hear some more people say it's the best, kind of film in the trilogy. Uh, if you, I would probably say you're crazy, but yeah, I'm more than interested in hearing other people's opinions of this film because it's incredibly divisive.
It is.
Incredibly.
It is. It is. Guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this onto: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Check the show out on Twitter, Ministry_Horror, TikTok, Ministry of Horror. Yeah, we will catch you next time. Goodbye.
See you later.